Hello, everybody. I am Haley Lynn Gray, and I am your guide here through the Alchemy of Successful Online Marketing Summit. Today's guest is the wonderful, renowned Catherine Johns, and she coaches entrepreneurs and executives who want to have more impact, build their business, and change the world. Crafting a compelling message and delivering it well are the keys to result when you speak in a meeting, on a conference call, or on a stage. A one-time wallflower, Catherine developed her powerful presence and her way with words as a radio news anchor, talk show host, savvy, sassy morning show side chick. Since she broke out of the broadcasting boys club, Catherine's been guiding professionals to speak up, stand out, and make their message more magnetic. They discover how to command a room and connect with the individuals in that room so they can influence their audience and take action. Thank you so much, Catherine. So glad to have you here. This is really an honor.
Well, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm so excited to be talking about how entrepreneurs introduce themselves and talk about their work. Because, as you know, Haley, I think most people do it really badly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can substantiate that. I see a lot of it with my networking meetings that I go to in particular, but I also see it in the online space. And I will tell you that I've had a huge struggle with it as well. People will look at me and they go, "So what do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I am a marketing strategist and I do all this blah, 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 blah." And people just like...
Exactly. That's exactly the point. People shut down when we go into our blah, blah about ourselves. So my goal today is to talk about a different way to approach that. I want to turn the whole thing upside down, because what you just said, Haley, is what most people do. They say, "What do you do?" And I say, "I'm Catherine Johns. I'm a speaker and a coach. I have a 90-day package, blah, blah, blah." And I've lost people. Yeah, exactly like this. So are we ready to tackle a new way to approach it?
Let's do it.
All right. So sometimes I call this the P/5 formula. Sometimes I call it the pickle and the promised land. And both of those give you a hint. There are 5 steps to this. They all start with P. So instead of talking about me, when you ask me, "What do you do?" I want to talk about the people I serve, the pickle they're in. What would the promised land look like for those people? What's my path to get them from the pickle to the promised land? And I want to offer just a little bit of proof that I've done this before and it's worked. So I'm going to take those apart and tell you a little bit about each piece, and then we'll talk about how somebody could use it in a really natural conversational way. And I should say this can work. You mentioned networking, which is really where I started to develop this. I went to so many meetings where we'd go around a circle and people one after another would stand up and say, "I'm Catherine Johns, I'm Karen Hand, I'm Haley Green, I'm Margaret Smith, I'm whoever. And nobody is listening to anybody, because what are we all doing? We're sitting there waiting, thinking, what am I going to say when it's my turn, right? And we just tune people out. So that's how I came to develop this, but I found that it's really helpful online and in writing as well. So instead of starting with "I'm anything," I guess the way to think about this is, what are people most interested in? Is it me, my business, my strategy, my package? No. People are most interested in themselves and their business. So that's where we start. We start with the people we serve. Sometimes that means actually using the word "you" if in a one-on-one conversation, but very often it means a category. So instead of yapping about "I'm a coach," I might start out by talking about people who have a hard time speaking. So it's all about not me, but you or they. And then we go right into, what is the pickle these people are in? And, marketing experts have been saying forever, talk about the pain, make them feel their pain, rub their nose in their pain, all of that. I guess I feel a little lighter about it, and that's why I chose the word pickle, because sometimes the pickle we're in is not deep, dark pain. It's, it's just a little nagging thing that we'd like to take care of. It's something that we ought to do that we don't do, or something we want to have that we don't have. So we talk about what's the pickle our people are in, and bridge from that to what would the promised land look like? If they got rid of this pickle altogether, if they had their situation just the way they want it, what would that be like? And the more I can paint a picture of that, the more likely people are to be drawn in and interested in what I say. And you'll notice we're three-fifths of the way through this, and I haven't talked about myself yet. That's by design, because once again, are people interested in me? Sadly, not very much. So I've got them thinking about themselves, the pickle they're in, the promised land that they could have, and now I get to say, here's how I can help. So this is the path to get them from their pickle to their promised land. And that involves talking about me at long last. So I say just a little bit about how I help people get from their pickle to their promised land. I don't go into a bunch of detail. I don't talk about my packages or my rates or my process, because honest to God, nobody cares about that stuff. It's just a brief description of how I'm going to help you. And then I want to offer a little proof or a little evidence, something that says, I've done this before, I'm an expert, you can trust me. So I give an example, or you could think of it as a case study, but usually it's pretty short. This format, you can adapt it to, maybe you have a minute to talk about yourself at a Chamber of Commerce meeting or a women's group, or sometimes you have 30 seconds. You got to really compress it, and you need a sentence for each piece. Sometimes you have 15 minutes. You can even expand it and go longer, and add more detail, more stories. But the basic structure will work in any of those scenarios. So here's an example. I talked about, in the beginning, way back in the beginning, I would say, I'm Catherine Johns, I'm a speaker and a coach, and I coach people who want to speak better. And then I would go into, here's how I do it. Ixnay on all that. And instead, when I stand up at a networking group, I say something like, you know how you go to a networking meeting just like this, and you have to talk about yourself, but you don't really know what to say, and you're not sure how to get people to listen? It's really painful. It feels awful to stand there talking and people are glazing over. But what if you had a message that was so interesting that you could actually see people lean in and listen to you? So I'm Catherine Johns, and I help business people develop that message and then stand up and deliver it well. In fact, and then I tell a quick story about a recent client, and that's it. What happens when I do that is, instead of glazed eyes, I see people like raising an eyebrow or leaning in or smiling or turning to look at somebody else in the room because they're friends and they know they share this challenge. And it changes everything about how my message is received. But part of the thing here is it's not spewing a commercial at people. Like, I don't want to go into a whole song and dance that sounds like I've done it 1,000 times, even though if you network a lot, you do it a lot, right? You want it to sound conversational and natural and kind of as if you were talking to one person, even if you're talking to a whole group of people. So I'm going to assume that makes sense, because if you were with me, I would be saying, does that make sense? Since I'm talking to you by the miracle of technology, let's assume it makes sense and give you a couple of other examples. So business coaches, Haley, there are business coaches at every networking meeting you go to who are just like swarming to get business. And they kind of all sound the same, don't they? It's like one after another stands up and says, I'm a business coach, or I help entrepreneurs grow their business, or some kind of canned phrase. So how could you do it differently? My suggestion would be that you'd focus on one specific thing that you solve for people. So maybe it's you help people get more clients, or maybe it's you help people make a business plan, or maybe it's you help people get launched in their business. And the truth is, most business coaches cover all of those things, And we expect a business coach to cover all of those things. But you can't talk about it all in a short introduction. So you pick the thing that's really your wheelhouse, that draws people into you, and you focus on that. And then when you have, I guess I should say this, one way to think about this whole networking thing, often people talk about, I was networking and I didn't get any clients from it, or I didn't get any good contacts from it. You're really there to open relationships. So a brief introduction at a networking meeting doesn't usually get clients. It happens once in a rare while. Somebody comes up to you and says, I want that. And you're happy to make an offer. But usually it's more useful to think about it as opening relationships. And then you're going to follow up later. You're going to schedule a conversation. You're going to get together for coffee. And you'll have a chance to say more about your process, what you do for your clients. And they'll have a chance to ask a bunch of questions. And we do all that when we have a follow-up. But that initial introduction is really about capturing attention. So when I coach people who want to speak better, I talk about capturing attention, commanding a room, and connecting with the audience. This is the capture part, where we just give people a nibble to get them interested. So it could look like, I saw somebody this past week who was a writer, who's been going to networking events, and she particularly handles work for speakers. And she's been saying, I'm a writer, or I'm a ghost writer. Well, a lot of people hear that and think, I don't even know what a ghost writer is, or I know what it is, but I know I don't need one, or I'm not ready to write anything that needs to be ghost writing. So she kind of loses people before she even gets started. So one of the things we worked out for her, instead of starting with, I'm a writer, she's going to start with the people she serves, speakers. Speakers are really good at talking. That's why they're speakers, and they can get in front of a group and give them inspiration or education. But it's funny how they sit down at a computer and they can't do the same thing. They're so good at talking, but writing is not their thing. So they procrastinate, or they put it off, or they don't do it at all, or they come up with something lame. But to really be successful as a speaker, you need your message out in social media. You need it on your website. You need to be writing articles, blog posts, newsletters. Otherwise, you won't get gigs. Successful speakers have all that written content out so that they can pull in clients. That's where I can help. So that's where she gets into her path, which is writing for speakers and writing everything from a Facebook post to their book, depending on who they are and what they need, and making it effortless for them. In fact, just recently, she put out somebody's book, and within a couple of months after the publication, the speaker noticed a big increase in the number of contacts she was making successfully for people that she could speak to. So that's how she talks about herself. And it makes it so much more interesting. Haley, I need to take a breath and a sip of water. And does this make sense? And what do you think?
It absolutely makes a huge amount of sense to me. And it's exactly what I've done in my business, with getting speaking engagements, with getting in front of people, with creating content, with putting it on the internet, with reusing it on the internet, taking sounds. There's just so many aspects of this that, yes, absolutely.
And as a marketing alchemist, the magic of making your message about the people you serve.
Absolutely.
What I found working with clients, it's interesting because people say, oh yes, this makes total sense. I'm going to do it. We practice a few times. We get a few nuggets that they could use. Then they go to a networking meeting, and what do? They stand up and say, I'm Catherine Johns. I'm a speaker and a coach. They go right back to their old habit. And I think that happens partly because it is a habit, and partly because we have a tendency, most of us, to kind of follow the leader. Mm-hmm. And this is an important part about why this works so well. Mm-hmm. when you're in a networking situation where everybody stands up, we go around the circle and each person has X amount of time to talk about themselves, there's a pattern that's established. One after another, people stand up and say, my name, my label, and then they go on and tell you about the process that they do. Mm-hmm. And so when we hear people do that, we naturally fall into that pattern. But if we're listening to it, it lulls us to sleep. We hear the same thing over and over and we completely lose interest. So interrupting the pattern is part of why this works so well, to sort of flip it on end and approach it differently. But it also makes it a challenge because you've probably tried to change a habit somewhere along the line. It's not that easy. When you do something the same way over and over and now you want to do it differently, that can take some effort. So I encourage people to really practice this different way of talking about it. One of the things I run into with clients is they don't serve only one group of people. So when I say, who are the people you serve? They give me a list of 4 or 5 different kinds of people they serve. I recommend against trying to talk about them all at once. Mm-hmm. The more you try to stuff into your brief introduction, the less impact you have. You're better off to say less and say it well than to spew at people where they can't take it in. They're listening to you and it becomes overwhelming. What I find is interesting is people can extrapolate. So my writer person was talking about what she does for speakers. But if she were talking to a group and half the people were speakers and half the people did video or marketing or some other service that speakers use, those other people would still get it. When she talks about what she does for speakers, they can be processing, well, I'm not a speaker, but I bet she does the same thing for people like me. If you give people time and space to think, as opposed to just spewing at them really quick and trying to stuff a lot of stuff into your 45 seconds and get it all out there because God knows you've got so much to say and they better hear it all. If you don't do that and give people a little room to think, they process it just fine. Or they're not your clients. And that's okay too, because in any given room of networkers, some of them are going to be your perfect people, and then some of them are not. And that's all right. You know, that's another trap we fall into, I think, about networking. The notion that, you know, I'm talking to everybody. I say when you're trying to talk to everybody, you're really talking to nobody. You really have to connect with people one at a time. That's true whether you're speaking in front of the room, doing a program, a seminar, a keynote, and it's also true when you're networking. Mm-hmm. You got to connect with each individual one at a time. And so when I work with speakers, I teach my clients how to do that. And the language is part of it, and part of it is how they use their physicality. Mm-hmm. So a couple of important things. It's more about them than it is about you, always. And I find people who get really discouraged by that, because we have a deep need to talk about ourselves, right? And it's our fallback. It's our interest. You know, I'm interested in me. You're interested in you, and so we go through life thinking that everybody else is interested in the same thing we are. No, they're interested in them, not us. So it's about you, not me. Mm-hmm. It stays away from labels. Labels kind of shut down the conversation. If I stand up and say, I'm a speaker and a coach, people have an idea in their head of what a speaker and a coach is, and they stop listening because now they've got the message. If I stand up and say, I'm a personal trainer, well, that would be unlikely. But if I did say, I'm a personal trainer, then you know what a personal trainer is. You're done. We've gone as far as we need to go, and there's no more to be said about it, and you stop listening. If I say I'm a business coach, you kind of know what a business coach is, and you're running in the opposite direction because in 2 seconds, the business coach will be on you trying to get your business because you've had that experience before. So the labels are really not very useful. It's more about them than you. It's not about your label. And you put your name down in the thing rather than at the very top. So there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, they're not interested in your name. And does that sound harsh? I know people are sitting there thinking, wait a minute, why am I networking if they're not interested in me? I probably should soften a little bit and say, they're interested in you, but only after you meet their interest in themselves. So starting with your name, you've probably had this experience. You've been to a meeting, they've gone around the circle, 22 people have said their names, and you remember maybe 2 or 3 of them because it just went in one ear and out the other. It's much better to capture their attention first and then say your name.
Yes.
Because then if you've got them, then they're actually interested and much more likely to remember. And people often ask about the name of their business. My business name is my name, so this isn't an issue for me. But for some people, they want to stand up and say, you know, I'm Catherine Johns from Speakers United. I think in most networking situations, the name of your business is superfluous. And sometimes your own name is superfluous. I've actually seen some very successful people who don't even say their name. They talk about what they do. They talk about how it serves the client, and people come and talk to them without knowing their name. So you can even skip the whole thing, but I for sure wouldn't go into a whole thing about name of business. Here's my website. Where would you find me? I'm on LinkedIn. All of that jazz doesn't belong in your brief introduction. When you say your name, if you say your name, you want to capture their attention first and then let them know who you are. And all of this is aimed then at opening conversations. Some people do very well, and this is something for each of us to try out because it kind of depends on how comfortable you get with your own messaging. Some people do very well saying something really direct, like, if that sounds like something you could use, let's talk at the end of the meeting. Or something like that, that actually is a sort of a soft call to action. Some people feel squeamish about it and it comes off sounding insincere or practiced or something like that. So it's something to play with and see if it works for you. Sometimes I do it and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I actually invite people to a conversation for going deeper.
Fantastic.
So can you imagine yourself doing this, Haley?
Absolutely. And I think that it's important to do this not just in face-to-face networking meetings, but also when you're introducing yourself for doing, say, a Facebook Live or a video online. You don't get up there and say, hey, I'm Haley Gray and I do blah, blah, blah. And people just go,
Yeah. And, you know, I do a weekly newsletter focused on business communication, speaking in particular, but also networking and marketing and all of this stuff. And I wrote an article recently about LinkedIn posts and Facebook posts that start out, I'm so excited to tell you, I'm thrilled to announce. Nobody cares if you're thrilled. We don't know you yet. So I would never encourage my clients to write that kind of message, even in a little snippet on social media. I still want to make it about you and what you need and what you would get if you read my newsletter. Facebook, I noticed the other day, Facebook has added a way to personalize invitations to like my page. It used to be you could just click on something and people would get a notice that said so-and-so wants you to like their page. Now they have a personal message. They have a pre-written message, or you can personalize it. But the pre-written message is so bad, I would never use it. I wish now I'd written it down so I could tell you. But it's all about why it will be good for me if you like my page. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you're my best friend, you care if it's good for me. If you're anybody else, if you're somebody I'm connected to on Facebook, but I've never met you in real life, and once in a while we like each other's things, you don't care about me, about boosting my page, about whether I'm successful, about what, you don't care about any of that. No. You care about one thing, what would be in it for you? So when I rewrite that message, I write it, you'll find X. You'll find interesting articles about how to be a better marketer or a better networker or a better speaker, or you'll find content here that will help you get promoted, or so I fill in the blank with something that would make sense for that person. then ask them to like my page.
Absolutely.
So the same theory applies when we're writing, when we're on social media, or as you say, when you're introducing yourself on a summit. Even, I try to write my bio so that it starts with really clearly at the top what people get if they work with me or if they bring me in to speak. It's a big switch for a lot of people. And I run into clients who get, frustrated because they try it and it feels like so unfamiliar and it doesn't feel natural. And it's because they're accustomed to just spewing stuff about themselves at people.
Yep. Well, and I've got plenty of examples of people just shutting down, where I've gotten to where I was doing Facebook Lives in my group every day for almost a year. And
boy, that's a lot of Facebook Lives.
That's a lot of Facebook Lives, right? And I would start the videos frequently with, "Hi, I'm Haley Gray, and here's what I do." And the number of people who would watch those videos and rewatch those videos was pretty high, but it was interesting to see how many people would still go in my own Facebook group, "Well, what is it exactly that you do?"
Interesting.
And I was like,
Yeah, how could they not know that? They're here in my group, right?
To your point that they just shut down.
Yeah.
And that was the point where I really learned, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting.
Well, and part of it is that for a lot of us, what we do is not so crystal clear. And we may do more than one thing. So one of the things that comes up for me, on my business card, it says I'm a speaker, a coach, and an author. But I would never use that in an introduction in person. I'm Catherine Johns. I'm a speaker, a coach, and an author. Boring. And it's too many things. And do I want you to buy my book, or do I want you to sign up for coaching, or do I want you to bring me in as a speaker? So I need to choose. And even when I speak at network, I never talk about the book. But as for speaking and coaching, I use one or the other. So I might, and in a certain group, if there are people there that I think might belong to organizations that could hire me, I might focus on that and say, you've probably been to a boring meeting or two. Because often speakers come in and yap, 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 and you walk out thinking, why was I even there? But imagine a meeting that is so interesting, people are reluctant to leave. And when they do leave, they take solid information with them that they can use in their business tomorrow. I'm Catherine Johns. When I speak to groups, that's exactly how it goes. So I'm looking for groups of professional women, business owners, and retail operators. I'm making this up off the top of my head. I needed a third category. And if you're a member of a group like that, I'd love to talk with you about coming in to provide a great program for your members. So it started off with painting the picture of a really boring meeting, because have we all been to boring meetings and conferences? Yes, we have. And what would it be like to have people really energized by your speakers? And then, and only then, my name, that's what I can do.
Yep, exactly.
Makes sense? And then sometimes I do it about coaching, depending on who's in the room. It's about helping people craft their message and deliver it well. And even that I might segment. So sometimes I really zero in on networking because with the content that we're talking about now. And sometimes I might do, you're already doing networking, so you know what it's like to talk about your work in this kind of bite-sized format. But really successful business owners are going much farther. They get on a stage and talk about their work in ways that attract way more clients. And speaking becomes part of the way that they grow their business. So if you would like to do that, and then I can talk about coaching people to be speakers. But once again, where does it start? It doesn't start with I coach speakers. It starts with you have a business, you want it to grow, and speaking is going to be a way to help it grow. And then how I can make that happen for you.
Exactly.
So,
Fantastic. Good stuff.
what more do you need to know about how to introduce yourself? I should probably recap. We have the people you serve. Who are they? Narrow it down. Not all the people you serve, because there might be a lot of different categories, but one group of people you serve. What's the pickle they have?
Mm-hmm.
And again, they might have a bunch of problems, but, and if you're a business coach, you might solve a lot of those problems. But to try to talk about them all in your brief message will be overwhelming and not interesting, and it'll just go right by people. So pick one and focus in on that. What would the promised land look like? If they didn't have that pickle, what would life be like for them? If they had solved that problem, where would that take them in their business? And you want to get real specific about this. This is something else to think about as you craft your own message. Often we stop short of the end result for the client or customer. So here's an example. I might say, talk about speaking better. Because to me, it's obvious why somebody would want to be a masterful speaker.
Right.
Duh. Why wouldn't you want to be a masterful speaker? Yeah. Well, people are not sitting out there thinking, oh gosh, if only I were a masterful speaker. Nobody is thinking that today. What are they thinking? They're thinking, if only I had more clients, if only I could raise my rates, if only I didn't have to work so hard to get every client. So I have to link masterful speaking to that outcome, or it flies right by them. They don't hear it. Yeah. And for most of us, because we do what we do, it's so obvious to us. We think, well, duh. But no, you got to spell it out. And a really nice, easy way to do that is to remember to say, so that. I help people become masterful speakers so that they can pull in extra clients every time they get in front of a group. It's the so that is the thing people really want. And it's so easy to forget that because it's obvious to us. We forget that it needs to be spelled out to somebody else.
Absolutely.
So as a marketer, you know that. And I'm guessing sometimes you still forget to say it because you're an expert at this stuff. You do it in your sleep, and it's easy to lose sight of how much we have to spell out for other people.
Yeah, exactly. Good stuff.
So pickle, promised land, and then the path. Is it coaching? Is it a book? Is it a webinar? Is it a telesummit? What is it that you do with limited detail? And then who did you do it for that had good results?
Fantastic.
All right.
Thank you. If somebody were looking for you online, where would they go about finding you?
They would find me, they'd find me on Facebook, LinkedIn. First and foremost, probably catherinejohns.com. That's my website, and that has links to other things. I am on Facebook, and I would love to get friend requests. I have a business page. It's Catherine Johns Chicago, and you could like me. And what would you get if you like me? Because I promised that. I post about business communication in general, and lively debates often spring up there from people who have different kinds of businesses and therefore different opinions about how best to communicate. And I'm on LinkedIn too. We could link. I'd be happy to connect with people any of those places.
Fantastic. And you have a free download for our audience, and the link is going to be below. So tell us a little bit about what that link is.
So remember I said earlier, when you're out to grow your business, you need to capture attention, command respect, connect with people. It's really those three things. What we've been talking about today is capturing attention, that kind of initial stage of developing a relationship. So my download is for when you're ready to go deeper and command a room and connect with an audience. It's 39 keys to do exactly that. 39 keys to command a room and connect with the audience. And it's about being a better, more masterful, more natural speaker so that you can use speaking as a way to grow your business, get people involved in your cause, make them vote for you, whatever it is you're seeking. Speaking can be that path when you do it well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
It is my pleasure.
This has been an honor.
Thanks. We'll talk again, Haley.
See you soon.
Bye.